Voyager and Starfleet Academy actor Robert Picardo really likes to argue with me on X, which is fun. I think it's good-natured because, I don't know, he seems to be a nice guy. But he definitely is very on the left pretty hard, extremely anti-Trump, mostly post-anti-Trump stuff. He is a Catholic. I'm Catholic as well, and so, I mean, we kind of have some camaraderie there, but it's interesting. So I post pretty regularly, just making sure to reclaim the culture for normal people, because everything pretty much in today's climate, from Star Trek to otherwise, has been just taken over by the radical left and blacklisted everybody else who just has any sort of just want to have any kind of normal interactions with things. And it's gone across everything. It's gone Star Trek, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Star Wars, Doctor Who, gosh, I mean, the list goes on. Dungeons and Dragons, everything's been appropriated by these people. And if you go back to a lot of the origins of this stuff, you would look at it and see these characters are mostly right-wing and Christian influenced. Now, Star Trek was a very secular show, as we know, but the original series actually did have a nod to Jesus Christ. Actually, Spock had, in the episode Breads and Circuses, acknowledged Christ in it, and it was pretty interesting. And a lot of what Gene Roddenberry wanted to put in was actually nixed by a Catholic producer, because it was going a little too hard on stuff like that. Now, it did have a lot of themes that, of course, like people trying to get into godhood and whatnot were often fake and often charlatans. And that is definitely a part of the original series and the original movies as well. But if you look at that, that's kind of like a power corrupt sort of situation. And so that's something that, I mean, everybody kind of gets into this powerful sort of thing. If you want to play God, if you want to change things, you are kind of like going to be a maniacal evil being, right? I think that's something that transcends anything, and of course doesn't necessarily talk about the Christian God in that kind of level, who's very real. And so, very interesting here. We've seen it's very interesting. Like, a lot of the Voyager actors are openly Christian. We know that Robert Picardo, as I said, is, and that Chakotay's Robert Beltran also is, which is kind of cool. And I do like that about the people from Voyager. That's very nice. So I posted this, and Robert Picardo went in arguing, much as he was about my Starfleet Academy interpretation the other day. It gets kind of interesting, and I'll talk about this, and talk about it in the context of what this means for current year Star Trek, because I think his attitude represents a lot of the writing these days, which causes problems with a lot of modern Star Trek and will cause problems with Starfleet Academy as well. So this is why I said Batman has always been inherently right-wing and Christian. And yes, as you can see, going a little viral on this right now. Hit the like and subscribe button as we talk about all things Star Trek and more. And guys, I am a writer myself. If you like my ideas on storytelling, if you like my ideas on character, you'll really enjoy my Valiant Frontiers. This is a trilogy I am actually crowdfunding right now. The Soul Catcher is the first book, The Safe Place is the second, and Time Bomb the third. I'm trying to do these in a classic science fiction style. You can see like the painted covers that look like they're out of the 70s, because I miss things. I want to bring things back to when it was real heroism, a real sense of wonder in science fiction. If you like classic Star Trek, you're really going to enjoy this. Grab this in the description below, and thank you for supporting our channel and supporting our artistic efforts. All right, so I said this. Robert Picardo said, I read Batman. Batman has always been inherently a liberal, social justice Catholic whose values weren't corrupted by being a billionaire, though he was merely a millionaire back then. Let's see. Funny how we see what we want to see. Interesting analysis on this. Now, this is great. Of course, the writers confirmed that Batman's a Catholic Christian. This came from Frank Miller and Chuck Dixon, the people who did write Batman, who confirmed that. And of course, there's been a lot of Catholic tropes in Batman over the years, all the time. Now, it's pretty interesting because as a billionaire who is running a company, he does actually go for justice. He doesn't really go for social justice. Social justice and justice are two different things. Social justice is a corruption of justice. It's actually focusing on identity, and actually, especially when you're looking at it from a modern lens like right now, it's focusing on like, white people oppress black people, a false narrative in society. Women are oppressed. It's a feminist sort of thing. And of course, the LGBTQ nonsense that is propagating everything as well. Batman never was focused on that. In fact, he just was focused on criminals on the streets. He was using his billionaire assets to do things himself because he was taking action. It's a very right-wing concept in general, right? It's something that that is more akin to an Elon Musk or a Donald Trump than anything else. And that, of course, upsets people just like by drawing that comparison. But that's very much what Batman is. Batman is justice. He's very pro-police. Now, the reason this is being talked about at all is there's an artist named Daniel Warren Johnson who actually is taking over the Batman in terms of a book called Absolute Batman. And he put out an image where he actually had Batman killing a police ICE officer. Now, this is very un-Batman-like, and it's gross. And this is somebody who works at DC Comics now. Chuck Dixon, who wrote Batman, one of the longest tenures on it, actually replaced this with artist Sergio Cariello, who did Batman wearing the ICE logo and actually beating up Antifa people and bringing them to justice. Now, Batman, again, doesn't kill. We know this, so this is ridiculous. And so this actually is much more in line with what Batman actually is. Batman's always very friendly with the police. Commissioner Gordon has a bat signal that he brings him in to bring in and to help where the police cannot actually do things. So he's pro-police. He's been with the government for a while, works with them. It's very much, again, a situation where we have this billionaire who's restoring law and order. It's very, very much, like I said, a right-wing and a sort of Christian mentality with Batman. Now, Robert Picardo agrees he's Catholic/Christian, but throwing in social justice is something that's not the case here, right? And this is interesting, too. You do see in reality, when you look at conservatives and liberals, conservatives are much more likely to donate to charity. Bruce Wayne is always holding charity balls, always holding charity galas. That's something that, again, is mostly a right-wing kind of thing to do in America, and, of course, a very Christian thing to do. So I said what was considered liberal in the 1960s is basically with Kennedy is basically Trumpism, so that depends on your frame of reference. But social justice is an absence of justice in general, and Batman is about real justice. And that's my thoughts here. So Batman would loathe Pete Hegseth. I mean, he's just personally attacking somewhere on there. I said, well, the character is public domain soon, so you can write him in that way if you want. But as far as older continuity goes, you can check with the legend Chuck Dixon about what an authentic Batman is like. And this is where he gets it very interesting. And this is where I said it's going to tie into Star Trek and modern Star Trek as well. He says there is no correct analysis of any character in literature. I learned this at Yale, which is, as a grandson of immigrants, I was privileged to attend as a scholarship student, graduating in 3 years with high honors. My Batman is truly an American hero, not a MAGA prop. Okay. When you get into Americanism and patriotism and all that, again, like that's not usually a hallmark of the left. It's much more a hallmark of the right. But aside from that, look at this line. There's no correct analysis of any character in literature. Any character can be portrayed in any way and conceived of as anything. Now, this is a postmodernist, nihilistic sort of look at things. It's a view that there is no right and wrong. There is no black and white. There's only shades of gray. Again, that's a weird thing for a Catholic to say because we know very, very correctly that there is direct right and wrong. The Catholic Catechism states what's correct and what is right. It also states what's wrong. And in fact, Christianity, and if you look at what Jesus preached most of the time, it was a list of things, you shall not do this, right? That's what the Ten Commandments are. And then Jesus actually elaborated on stuff and actually went in there and said, this is how you should live. And so that is very much a black and white, right and wrong sort of moral. It's not a shades of gray, anything could be any way. And that is something that, again, flies in the face of this. So tying this to Star Trek, if you look at this, you see these people doing prequels and reiterations of things. Well, if you believe that any character can be any way and the Federation could be any way, we don't really have to follow Gene Roddenberry's vision of that. We can look at it and say, oh, we have the burn now, and the Federation all fell apart. We're in a dystopian universe, and that's that. Well, that's not what Star Trek should be. Star Trek was never intended to be anything like that, and Gene Roddenberry would have nicked that in the bud immediately if it was the case. But this is their interpretation of it. It's to them, any interpretation they want to put, any spin on anything they want to put is just as correct as anything Gene Roddenberry would have done. Now, in my view of things, as a more conservative, of course, Star Trek fan, holding to Gene Roddenberry's vision for what the original was, and then, of course, what we had through Next Generation that was built, and a little bit with Deep Space Nine and Voyager, would be something that, and Voyager just harkened back to the Next Generation, really, would be something that we should continue on with and actually try to build on for the Next Generation. The Picard show actually kind of ruined that because they actually showed a Federation falling apart 30 years down the line because it was just another just dark dystopian disaster. And that's not what this is about. The reason that all got popular, by the way, is because of Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica. They built a dark universe out of that. The original obviously was not as well. It was, if you look at the original, it was nothing like that. But that became the popular iteration of Battlestar Galactica, and all science fiction ended up being like that as a result. I think when everybody tried to copy that, that's what caused a failure of a lot of different things. And of course, you get into the social justice and the like that then trickles out of that in the dark universes. You really have a problem with things. And this is where the writing all falls apart. And this is why nothing really resonates now, because if there's no correct analysis, or if there's no correct way to write, if there's no correct way to do things, well, then you get Strange New Worlds, right? You get this documentary episode that's not Star Trek, but hey, it's the writer's vision of what Star Trek should be. And if you looked at that documentary, the whole point of it was some guy going out there saying that Starfleet's corrupt and terrible. Well, he eventually was proven wrong, but like, why did we spend 30 minutes of the episode like on that narrative, like pushing that agenda? Like, it's pretty crazy. Like, that is the opposite, again, of what Star Trek should have been about, and that's objectively true. Like, that is a true and false sort of situation. It's not a incorrect analysis of literature. But I explained this as well, because I said there's freedom to choose, and choosing can be right or wrong. When I was in high school, I wrote an essay claiming Pikachu was a Christ symbol in the Pokemon movie to mock the idea of symbolism, people reading into things too much, right? That was what I was mocking in high school, because I understood this even back then. I gave a detailed analysis that could have convinced anyone that Pikachu was in fact a Christ symbol. My English teacher failed me, even though that was the best essay in the entire class, and I knew it was the best essay in the entire class because I put more work into it than anybody else, and I actually had better analysis. But she didn't like my sense of humor. I was joking, of course, and she was also right, though, because Pikachu, objectively, is not a Christ symbol. Well, he actually goes back on his deal. We agree about Pikachu. That's a start. Like I said, I think he's good-natured here, but he doesn't realize that he just kind of invalidated there is no correct analysis of any character in literature. He just said, like, there is. I just showed a demonstrable like example of like, this is wrong analysis, and it's obvious, and it is. Like, and he agreed with it. So if there is right and wrong, he just invalidated his point. Now that's the interesting. I said, now the holographic doctor I could write a book on. And he says, I would certainly be interested to see how much we agree about the interpretation of my character. And I would say that most of my analysis would just be based on his interpretation of the character. And so it would probably be pretty close to in line of what he actually had with it. Now, we'll see if Starfleet Academy, it's basically a Discovery continuation, actually takes the character and like actually does right by that character. I don't know if the writers are going to do that now. I'm going to guess probably not. I think I'm a little skeptical about it. He's talking about things which are pretty interesting about like a 900-year-old holographic doctor. I obviously don't like the fact that like the hologram aged. I don't think that makes sense. I get it, I guess, because they don't want to have to like do the de-aging technology on things, but that's what I think probably should have been done for a holographic character, because we already have too many characters in Star Trek like Data, Q, who have aged why are they aging? It doesn't make any sense, right? And so they try to explain it away way too many times, and it just, kills the suspension of disbelief at that point that these characters, that's a program, would then just age like this, right? But it is pretty neat. He will have a different perspective being 900 years old, having seen people live and die. That's a pretty interesting sort of thing. And I'd actually like to see this. The way that I would handle it, if you've read the book A Canticle for Leibowitz, I would actually have the Doctor, since we're post-burn and all this stuff and the Federation fell apart, the Doctor can end up being like almost like a saint-like figure throughout the ages that kind of appears because he's a hologram. And you can have these like vignettes of him over the years actually being miraculous to people and becoming a legend like that. I think following the Canticle of Leibowitz idea would actually be a neat way to do that. I would love to write that book if they want to hire me. Of course, they're not going to. But my gosh, that would be the best Star Trek book possibly ever if somebody actually did that and did it right. Now, like I said, my interpretation would be very, very similar to what's on Voyager, and I'm sure he'll agree with my interpretation of things if I did it, because it would be based on what he did. I loved the Doctor in Voyager. I thought it was the best character on the show. I liked his cantankerousness. I liked the way that he got annoyed with human idiosyncrasies, and yet he kind of had a heart of gold at the same time and really, cared about everybody despite putting on that like hard facade. That was a neat character, and I really enjoyed it all the way around. So interesting stuff, interesting analysis right here. Good chat, Robert Picardo. Thanks for hanging out, and I'd love to interview you someday, either on the channel here or on my written blog or anything like that. If you do watch this, I don't know. Leave a comment down below with what you think about this. If you like my analysis on just literature and of course the way characterization is, check out my books. It's in the description below. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Am I right? Am I wrong? Hit the like and subscribe button. We'll be back soon.